Hello, everybody. Welcome to the day 5 of Advent of Code. Now, I'm actually recording this on day 6 because I didn't get a solution until today, and I spent probably much more time on this than I should have. Yesterday, on day 5, I actually did manage to produce something that I think is a correct solution, except it is so inefficient, I didn't actually get to manage to see the end of it running. I did try to leave it running overnight, but I don't know if it's a problem that I had with Mew. It just seemed to just give up at some point, and I've got no idea if the program that I wrote actually does end or not. The smaller set of pairs that they give you as a test data that is used for the example, I did run it on that and I did get the correct answer, so I suspect it probably does work. However, as I started running it, I realized that there's a much more efficient way of doing it, and I then set about starting to write that solution. I didn't actually really get into that until today, and actually I didn't even complete that until this evening, and I've spent, as I say, far too much time looking at this. So this video is going to quickly look at both my solutions and just talk through what I did. So the inefficient one, first of all, there's a few things in there that I really like about the solution. So I use dictionaries to do it. Now, looking up a pair of values, looking for a key, and then looking for what value gets returned, dictionary is like a really obvious way of doing that. Except the dictionaries that I've produced are absolutely enormous, and it's actually the creation of the dictionaries that is the intractable part of this problem. So I started running the program, and I just realised straight away, actually, this is stupid, and there's probably a much more effective way of doing it. So I left it running, as I said. So let's have a quick look and see what I had done. I'd actually created the dictionaries initially, as you can see on the lines that I've highlighted here, and I was going to literally map seed to soil, soil to fertilizer, humidity to location, and so on. And I realised, well, actually, further down the line, I can probably make that bit of code where I start looking for each of the dictionaries to be a lot more concise and put it in a loop if I put all the dictionaries into a big list. So I actually created an empty list of dictionaries, and then I went through and I just created a dictionary to each, or for each value in the line. And what I've done here is I've just numbered them 0 through 6, just so I can know what I'm referring to. However, you always look at them in the same order anyway, so it doesn't really matter. That's just there just for me to remember. The loading and filing is straightforward. It's a bit like it is in any other program that we've looked at so far this year. There's a couple of times where you get a set of lines, so you would have a blank line followed by a line which would describe what the pairings are that come immediately after it. So I've programmed something to handle that. So if it encounters I think I've done it, so if it splits the values up and then it ends up with 2 values, I think that's determined to be the title of the blog. So then I increase the dictionary number that I'm looking at, so I move on to the next dictionary, and then I got around the blank line by saying if there is more than one item that is in the split values, because when I split the empty string, it gave it sort of, I don't know if that's what happens when you split an empty string on a space, or it's just the way that they were set up, but it appeared to just give me a 1 item array, which was an empty string anyway in that value. So if I don't have 1 item, then I must have a set of pairs, and all I do is I just go through them and add them to my dictionary and put them in a loop, so I can then also deal with the range. So the third value there, which is item 2 in the set of values, or index 2 in the set of values, I'll loop up to that and I just add it onto my values, which are stored in the first and the second part. Indexes 0 and 1. Once I've set that up, I've then got the piece of code which will go through and loop through each of the dictionaries and start mapping them to one another. So if I look at this, and my code, I think actually in the second part is quite similar to this, I'm going to loop through each of the seeds which are pulled out. I didn't talk about that, but that was right at the start. It's kind of obvious how that code is going to look. I'm going to take the integer cast of it, store it in a value called mapped, and then this was, I thought, an interesting way of getting around a problem. I couldn't remember how to create how to access a function that would tell me if a dictionary contains a key or not. There's got to be a way of doing it, and in the spirit of the challenges, I've not been looking up how to do things as I've been doing the challenges. So I decided to use try in accept block to get around that. So I try to extract a value from dictionary. If there is no key and it crashes, then it'll throw the exception. I just needed to do something for the exception, which was just to set mapped to be equal to mapped, because if it hasn't got if it doesn't exist in the set of maps that we've got, then it just carries the value through to its next its next dictionary lookup, I guess. So that's how I deal with that. And then to find the lowest, to be honest, there's only 20 seeds anyway, so I could have probably just done it by sight, but I have written a short algorithm to just find me what the lowest value is. So first time it comes around, and this is exactly the same in the other program, it will set maps to be the lowest value, and then every time after that it will check to see if mapped is a new lower value. If it is, it will just assign it to lowest. Once I'm done with all of that loop, I should have determined the lowest value, and then I can output it. But it was giving me a value that was, well, actually, it was a lot too high. So there was a lot of things. Oh no, sorry, that was in the second version. Yeah, this one didn't give me a solution. It just kept pinging around forever. And as I said, I left it running overnight, and I come back downstairs, all excited to see if it had worked, and it just appeared to have just given up. Never mind. So my more efficient solution, as I was running it, I realised what I could have done. Rather than build the dictionaries, I could have just taken, this is kind of obvious really if you think about it, taken the seed and checked if it is within the range of the start value up to whatever the start value is plus the range that's specified in the trio of values on each line. And if it is, then I would do the same calculation to find out what the mapped value is going to be. And that is basically how I got around it. So my solution is, it's a little bit smaller. In fact, I haven't quite tidied this up as much, but if I take out a lot of the blank space in it, you can see it's going to come down to about 30 lines, just over 30 lines. So it's a good solution. I think it's a good solution. So take the seeds in exactly the same way. What I do is I actually built I've got like a 3D array by the end of it. But what I've done is I've created an empty list of maps, and there's 7 different maps as we know. And for each map, I then create another map which is going to contain, for each list, which is a map, I'm going to add another list within it. So it's going to come a list of lists. And each of those lists is just going to store the values, which are in themselves a separate list as well, hence why it's a 3-dimensional array. So it's a list of lists of 3-part lists. Once I've extracted that information, then I'm actually going to start looking through them, and I'm going to sort of combine the 2 steps from the previous solution together in order to work out the way through this sort of traversal of the dictionaries, or the sort of pseudo dictionaries, I guess, that I've produced here. So I'm going to go for each of the seeds that are there. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to count from 0 up to 6, or 0 exclusive, count up to 7, and I'm going to decide whether or not the value fits within the range here. So literally, if the value that I'm looking at, and I've set it to mapped, and you'll probably get to see why I've called it mapped in a second, if mapped is within the range that I'm looking for, and I've not actually found a value yet. So I want it to only do that if I have not found a value yet. And if I have, what I do is I just set the value found to be true. So the next time it loops around, it will ignore this piece of code, because what I was finding, I was getting a value that was too high. And the reason why I was getting a value that was too high is the number was appeared to be appearing in the list that it's supposed to be. And then what it was doing is it was then saying, okay, well, it's not in the lists that are part of the other other set of maps that go with seed through to fertilizer, for example. But what was happening was it was then taking the original value and using that. So I was just ending up with just like basically random numbers by the end of it. So this made it behave exactly as I wanted to do. And then what I've done, I've included a little print in there just so I can see the seed to its max value, just so I could trace it along a little bit and see what was going on. And I then use exactly the same short algorithm to find what the lowest value is. And if I run that, there's my solution. Finds it really quickly. Be interesting to see if other people came up with a similar solution to this. After I found it, I did have a quick look at some of the things that people did on YouTube. People obviously realising that it's a large problem. I saw a few people use multi-threading. Basically, great way to attack it, to sort of break up the problem into smaller parts, and you'll be able to get through it quicker. This solution doesn't really need to consider that, because I'm just basically seeing whether a number is greater than a specified number and less than another one. And if it is, then I just go and work through and calculate the value that it's going to map to, and then move on to the next one via a loop. So I think it's a good solution. I'm pretty happy with it. Please let me know if you've learned anything. Please let me know if there's anything that you would add to it or anything you would change to it. I've already learned so much already from just doing the first 5 days of this, and hopefully there's plenty more to come. So I've had a look at day 6 already, and it's getting quite late in the evening. I might have a quick attempt at it now, and I'll see what I can do. So thanks for watching, and I will see you soon.